Hello. So this is a rough guide for the MPT settings for the Radeon 6000 series. So my card is 6800 XT from Power Color, but I will show you the settings I've used for 6700 from XFX and 6600 also from XFX. So I've changed everything to default settings. So let's start the adrenaline settings. Go to the performance tab, okay, tuning, and let's go to custom. And if you enable all advanced options, you'll see that by default the card goes up to 2.8 GHz and 1150 millivolts. Now let's start MorePowerTools. And the first step is to select your card. And everything is grayed out because you don't have the card's BIOS loaded. So in order to get the BIOS of your card, just start GPU-Z, and under the BIOS version, here you will see the Save BIOS button and just save it to file. Let's say, a moment, I did it here. Let's say, okay. And you can close GPU-Z. And now in MorePowerTools, go to load the BIOS file. And now you will see you can change numerous settings around here. These are the overdrive features, so if you disable something, it won't show here in the performance setting of the adrenaline driver. As you can see, the OC limits are the same as in driver, so 2.8 GHz, and the power is 1150 millivolts. So I don't know what kind of quality or bad quality chip you have in your card, but my likes, let's say 122 millivolts, 1042 millivolts is 2.4 GHz, or 1075 millivolts at 2500 MHz. But since it's summer here and I don't have AC, I use it like this. And I limit the voltage on the chip, on the GPU itself, and on the SoC to the same value. But let us, I did it all before, so let me just start another instance of MorePowerTools. Select the GPU and I will load the preset which I use as a daily driver here in the summer days. So as you can see, I have increased negative power limit and just put 10% over the stock power. The card comes with 272 watts by default, but with these settings it is 0.1 volts lower voltage than default. So with these settings the card will never cross 260 watts while running at 100 MHz higher frequency than stock, no problem. So on this page, on this section of the page, you will see the memory voltage. By default, they are all maxed out for every state, but it's not really needed. Even if you're overclocking, let's say to 2150, which is the max clock that the driver will allow, it works with 1300 millivolts if you don't use fast timings. Of course, it varies from card to card. On this power color Radeon, it works like this. So if you use fast timings and overclock the memory, then you will need for the last stage 1350 millivolts. So if you limit the voltage here like this, then whatever you input in adrenaline driver, as a frequency. The card will not use more volts than it's written here. So 240 2400 megahertz for this card is, as I said, sweet spot with this voltage. And on the frequency tab, you'll see that I actually lowered minimum and maximum frequency because it doesn't matter. Of course, I will overclock the card from the adrenaline when it's booted, but just to be on the safe side, I put on lower values than it's by default, just to avoid some booting problems or something like that. But what matters here is this frequency. As you can see, by default it's 1400 megahertz. This card and two other cards I tried have no problems running on 1900 megahertz, but they will need at least this voltage, 1043 millivolts. If I want to run it at 2 gigahertz, then it requires 175. But it's a good practice to keep these voltages the same. Let's say if you want to lower the maximum frequency in overdrive to like something like this card will run it at 1025 millivolts. But if you want to use, let's say, 2 gigahertz at infinity clock frequency, then you should put here 1075. But for some reason, these big differences in these two voltages, the card is not stable. The card will crash randomly after maybe 10 or 15 minutes of use. So I just dial it down to 1950, and these two like this. It's sensitive that way, this card. So why is that important? As I said, if you want to overclock your memory beyond 2100 megahertz, then without increasing this clock, the actual performance won't be much higher than by default of 2 gigahertz. But by bumping this and maxing out to 2150, I see on average around 6% uplift on exactly the same core clock. So this one I didn't touch, the settings I didn't touch, but this one I did, because this is the stock fan settings. And as you can see, by default the card has a 35% PWM signal as minimum, and it has 0 RPM enabled. But I lowered the minimum because the fins were constantly spinning, because I disabled 0 RPM. Because in my mind it is better to have any airflow over the chips, especially VRM chips on the card, than just static air until 60 degrees. It's too, I don't know. I like my cards to be as cool as possible. And this target temperature here, this is the core GPU core temperature. This is not a hotspot temperature. So the hotspot temperature will, with this setting, likely go to 100 degrees Celsius, which is too much in my. I know it's under AMD normal recommendation, but it's too much for me. I never let hotspot temperature to go about 85, let's say. So, but if we go to OC limits, then you will see that, let us discard the changes and reset, that in Radeon Adrenaline drivers, you have tuning presets, quiet, balanced, and rage. and by default the quiet has a -6% TDP reduction, and it targets 85 degrees, and that is also for the GPU core, not for the hotspot. Hotspot here will be around 100 degrees. Balanced it targets 90, and we don't have here turbo, we have rage, it also targets 90. But I don't use this. Just telling you so you know what's this. And acoustic limits and target RPM. So what does that mean? It means that, let's say for balanced, under 90 degrees the card will run at 1300 RPM. After 90 degrees it will go to the acoustic limit of 2000 RPM. But this is the default fan value of the card. So if you don't use these presets in Adrenaline, this is what the card will follow. So let me put my modified back on screen. Yeah, I will load it just in case. So that's pretty much it. So you have to play with sweet spot on these voltages. Generally for RDNA 2, I think everything under 1 volt is okay. Once it goes over 1 volt, then it's not the heat it produces is not linear anymore. So it is with volt drop, this will come around 1 point, maybe 0.08 volts or something like that. So this is okay. And as I said, this frequency is just fine for these volts. Let me start GPU-Z once again. As you can see, by default the card will boost to 2310 megahertz. So with this undervolted by 0.1 volt and settings, you will get a higher clock. And how much higher? So realistically this goes up to 2350, 60, 70 megahertz. So it's about 100 megahertz higher than factory default. And the last feature from MorePowerTools that I think are important is this. On the features tab you have feature control, and as you see, by default you have all the states, deep sleep states enabled. So for clock, for SOTS, for Infinity Fabric and so on. But I like to keep them disabled because all of my games I have frame rate limit, because I have a 180 Hertz monitor, so I limit my frame rate to, let's say, 176, so it is always inside the FreeSync range. And if you enable these states, what will happen is when the GPU won't have enough work, then it will automatically go to the lowest possible sleep state to conserve energy. But the problem with that is that when the work starts piling up, it will automatically boost to highest possible frequency, and it will actually consume more power than if you prevented it from going in such low states. It doesn't matter for benchmark because they are always using the GPU to the max. But if you have any frame rate limiter, then this is important to disengage, and actually your power consumption will drop, because once it starts to ramp up from 0 to full throttle, it will consume more energy, sadly, but it is what it is. Okay, that's more or less it for the rough guide through this software. Now I'll show you what I use for other cards. So okay, so I will just load the preset. So once you've finished messing with this here, then you just save the file. You don't have to open up your BIOS file anymore. You just load the settings from the program, and it contains everything that's needed. So I will now load the settings for my 6700. As you can see, that XFX card. It has a nice beefy cooler, so there is no problem running this card cool even at 2.7 gigahertz, and it's 1.1 volts. It's needed for 2.7 gigahertz, and SoC is also here 1900, and it works like a charm. It doesn't go over 75 on the hotspot. It's beautiful. And as for the 6600, this one will go actually, so it's 2.75 gigahertz at just under 1.1 volts. So it's also a pretty good chip, or pretty good cooling, I should say. And those for 6700 and 6600, those were settings that absolutely have no problems running constantly. I've tried everything and they are stable 100%. That was the cheapest model of 6600, probably from XFX. And just as a bonus advice, because I didn't see any info on the web, I couldn't find much info on the web. Oh, sorry, I forgot to say. Once you finished messing with the MorePowerTools settings, you have to click write SPPT and reboot your computer for drivers to take notice of your settings. And if anything goes wrong or something, just click delete and it will be back to the factory defaults. And just as I said, I wanted to show you this. So this is Nanya technology C-die RAM Kingston Fury Beast, 2x16 gigabytes DDR4 3200. And I couldn't find any information on the internet about this particular memory IC. But as you can see, it has pretty relaxed timings for 3200, 16, 18, 80, 36, and blah, faster. But with a little bit of tweaking, this crappy die can actually be a solid performer. The problem is it doesn't like high frequency. I couldn't find any way to make it stable at 3600 megahertz, but at stock 3200, you can see you can use pretty tight timings, except for this one. It's a crappy chip, but the other ones are pretty okay. Just hope maybe it helps someone. So okay, that's more or less it, and see you next time.